As part of the orchestrated plan, we allege that 16 Michigan residents met covertly in the basement of Michigan GOP headquarters and knowingly and of their own volition signed their names to multiple certificates stating that they were the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America for the state of Michigan. That was a lie.
Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel today announcing felony charges against the 16 Michigan Republicans who falsely claimed to be the state's presidential electors back in 2020, all part of a plot aimed at keeping Donald Trump in office. Now, this marks the first time that any fake electors have been charged with a crime related to the scheme. Versions of this also took place in the battleground states of Georgia, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And what these electors in Michigan are charged with is very serious stuff. These Michigan fake electors are each facing 8 criminal felony charges, including forgery and conspiracy to commit election law forgery. Those criminal violations carry penalties ranging from 5 to 14 years in prison for each charge. That is likely. It is likely that other states have their eyes on this case because down in Georgia, Fulton County DA Fani Willis is also investigating the fake electors in her state. So far, Ms. Willis has struck immunity deals with at least 9 of those 16 fake electors in Georgia. And she's expected to announce criminal charges, potentially against the remaining electors and perhaps even against Donald Trump next month. Meanwhile, officials in Arizona announced last week that they are investigating the fake electors in their state. And then, of course, at the federal level, special counsel Jack Smith appears to be wrapping up his own investigation into the 2020 election, for which he has reportedly interviewed state officials in all 7 states where Republicans put forward those fake electors. Joining us now is Tim Heaphy, former U.S. attorney for the Western District of Virginia. He is also, of course, the former lead investigator for the House January 6th committee. Tim, it is great to see you. Thanks for being here tonight. I guess my first question is, in terms of the fake elector, the decision to charge these fake electors, I mean, how significant is this, and how do you see this potentially influencing or affecting other investigations at the state level into these fake elector plots?
Yeah, look, I think it's significant, but it's not new, right? The Select Committee identified this plot and the essential facts of the fake elector scheme in Michigan and other states back during our hearings and our report. We developed evidence, for example, from the chairman of the Republican Party of Michigan, who, when presented with this idea of alternate electors, fake electors, said, we can't do that. When presented with the idea that these electors needed to be in the state capitol, according to Michigan law, on December 14th to certify these fake electors, and that they were proposing to spend the night in the Capitol before that in order to ensure that they would be there the next day, she said, that's crazy. You can't do that. So there's evidence that we developed a very specific intent, that these electors were told that this is unlawful, that there's no basis for purporting that these are official certified electors, yet they went ahead and convened and issued those fake documents. So it's significant in that it's yet another manifestation of the plot. This is just one part of a multi-stage plot, but it's not new because this information has been out there for a long time.
Yeah, well, to that end, I mean, the Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel said that she effectively reopened this probe in January because up until that point, she'd been deferring to the federal investigation, but sort of didn't know what was happening there. So basically moved forward again on it on her own. I mean, yeah. How do you think the news that Jack Smith's investigative team has been also moving forward in parallel on the fake electors plot complicates this in any way? I mean, how do you see this sort of hand in glove or I don't know, the coordination or any cooperation between the state AGs who are running with the fake electors plot and the feds who are also investigating the same thing?
I don't think there's been any coordination, and I think that's been intentional. I think the Department of Justice has done this investigation on its own, has not coordinated with state attorneys general, with the DA in Georgia, with the district attorney in New York or anywhere else. They didn't coordinate with the Select Committee either, right? We turned over to them all of our work product, all of our transcripts, all of our documents upon completion of our work. They then used that information to inform their investigation. But to be clear, the department has pursued this independently, not coordinating with other prosecutors or congressional committees or anyone else, but rather evaluating these facts on their own. Now, if they do proceed with fake electors as part of a Jan 6 indictment, which seems likely, unclear what happens to the Michigan case. It might just sit and wait for the resolution of the federal case. It might proceed on a parallel track. There are violations of state law as well as potentially violations of federal statutes, so there could be concurrent prosecutions. But to be clear, Alex, this is not a master plan where all of these prosecutors are sort of kicking around, all right, who goes first and what facts are you going to bring? What are we going to bring? Justice Department's doing this on their own.
Yeah, and apologies if I suggested it was in any way a master plot. I think it's hard maybe sometimes for folks to understand that everybody's talking to the same people, but they're not coordinating with each other, right? Yeah. In the way that,
that's exactly right.
As you point out, the special counsel is talking to these fake electors or investigating them, and very much the states are too. There's no coordination there. I do wonder, because it looks as if Fani Willis is ready to hand down an indictment or is ready to bring an indictment against Donald Trump for his role in the Georgia fake electors plot or the efforts to swing the election in her state. Is there anything stopping the Arizona AG or the Michigan AG from issuing their own charges against Donald Trump, given the fact that one state AG is?
No, there's nothing stopping them from issuing separate indictments that specifically correspond to the individuals and the activity in those states. The Jan 6 federal case, however, seems like the umbrella. Okay, if President Trump himself and other sort of senior campaign officials or lawyers instigated this plan in multiple states, then they have exposure in all of those states, as well as the federal case. So you could see some overlap in the Fani Willis indictment if it's issued and it involves fake electors, and what Jack Smith is looking at, because this is not unique. The Georgia story is not unique. The Michigan story is not unique. All the states that you named earlier were all essentially consistent. This was a Washington-driven effort to generate these fake electors as one part of this multi-step plot to prevent the transfer of power.
Man, Tim, just looking at the magnitude of the legal dragnet, just the size of the dragnet that is hanging over the former president's head, it is astounding. Are you, given your sort of granular understanding of all this, does it surprise you that you're seeing so much action at the federal and the state level in and around January 6th?
No, Alex, right? The facts is what's driving this. And very early in the Select Committee's investigation, it was pretty obvious to us that those facts were pretty compelling, that the facts were pretty consistent, that the facts demonstrated criminal conduct. That's what the Select Committee ultimately recommended. And the manifestations of that are what you're seeing, both with respect to the activity coming out of the special counsel's office, most recently the target letter, and these other state indictments. It's all essentially reaffirming that essential truth, that this was a criminal scheme.
I can imagine it is reaffirming for someone who is on the inside for as long as you have been. Tim Heaphy, it's always great to speak with you. Thanks for making the time tonight.
Thank you.